Lucas told me he organized Ajay Krishna, and I'm curious that you are.
Yeah, he said to responsibility.
It's okay.
It's a pleasure.
No, I'm here for the whole morning program, for breakfast also. Can't go home if you didn't let me pay the donation.
Yeah.
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo. Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stuttara Sata Shishimati His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantara Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled. All glories to the assembled. All glories to the assembled. All glories to Sri Guru. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 We are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, Text 51. Shyama Shronyadiro Chishnu. Shyama Shronyadiro Chishnu. Dukula Svarnamekalam. Dukula Svarnamekalam. Samacharvangri Changoru. Samacharvangri Changoru. Nimna Janu Sudarshanam. Nimna Janu Sudarshanam. Shyama Shronyadiro Chishnu. Dukkula Svarnamekalam. Samacharvangri Changoru. Nimna Janu Sudarshanam. Shyama Shronyadiro Chishnu. Jishnu
Shyamasonyadiro Jishnu
Dukula Svarnamekalam
Dukula Svarnamekalam
Samacharvangri Janguru
Samacharvangri Janguru
Nimnayano Sudarshanam
Nimnayano Sudarshanam Shyamasonyadiro Jishnu Shyamasonyadiro Jishnu Dukula Svarnamekalam Dukula Svarnamekalam Samacharvangri Janguru Samacharvangri Janguru Nimnajanu Sudarsanam
Nimnajanu Sudarshanam Shyamashronyadiro Jishnu Dukula Svarnamekalam Samacharvangri Janguru Nimnajanu Sudarshanam Shyamashronyadiro Jishnu Dukula Svarnamekalam Samacharvangri Janguru Nimnajanu Sudarshanam. Word for word translation. Shyama, blackish. Shroni, lower part of the waist. Adhi, extra. Rochishnu, pleasing. Dukula, garments. Svarna, golden. Mekalam, belt. Sama, symmetrical. Charu, what means charu? Bhakti Charu Swami? Huh? Beautiful. Angri, lotus feet. Janga, calves. Uru, thighs. Nimna, lower. Janu, knees. Sudarshanam, very beautiful. Translation. The lower part of the Lord's waist is dark and covered with yellow garments, and the belt bedecked with golden embroidery work. His symmetrical lotus feet and the calves, thighs, and joints of his legs are extraordinarily beautiful. Indeed, the Lord's entire body appears to be well built. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Shiva is one of the 12 great authorities mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam 6:30-20. These authorities are Swayambhu, Narada, Shambhu, Kumara, Kapila, Manu, Prahlad, Janaka, Bhishma, Bali, Vyasaki or Shukadev Goswami, and Yamaraj. The impersonalists who generally worship Lord Shiva should learn of the transcendental Satchit Ananda Vigraha of the Lord. Here Lord Shiva kindly describes the details of the Lord's bodily features. Thus the impersonalists' argument that the Lord has no form cannot be accepted under any circumstance. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayang Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatang Vitang Tang Sajivam Sadvaitang Savadutang Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shyama Shrunyadi Rochishnu Dukula Svarnamekalam Samacharangri Janghoru Nimna Janu Sudarshanam. The lower part of the Lord's waist is dark and covered with yellow garments, and the belt bedecked with golden embroidery work. His symmetrical lotus feet and the calves, thighs and joints of his legs are extraordinarily beautiful. Indeed, the Lord's entire body appears to be well built. Hare Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada, he gives a short purport, and he is doing something which he did often. He's refuting the argument of the impersonalists that the Lord has no form. And it's such an important task Prabhupada took on that he even requested his disciples to chant his second part of the pranam, in which we say Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine, that Srila Prabhupada came to refute and destroy this misconception that the Absolute Truth has no qualities and no form and is eventually zero. And in the Vedic scriptures, this understanding of the Lord being, or the Absolute Truth being actually a person, is very nicely given in many different places. And I think we will try today to quote a few verses which are important to know in order to maybe also preach, because even in our preaching sometimes we happen to meet spiritualists who have an impersonal conception. Most of the time when we preach, we speak to people who don't even believe in something supreme, something spiritual. Living in a West, most of the people, they have a materialistic understanding where the conclusion is that everything is matter and even life came from matter. But then some rare souls, they believe in spirituality, they believe in something higher, something superior to matter, but then unfortunately the most prominent understanding outside of ISKCON and the Vaishnavism is that it is impersonal. And there is one famous verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. Let me see if I can. I was just learning it these days. And that goes like this. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam jnanam yach jnanam adhyayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. Who has heard this verse except Mahakrishna Prabhu? You heard it? Yes. Yeah, this verse says that the persons who are learned, those who understand the absolute truth, they have said that this absolute truth can be described or has three aspects: Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. And however, it is a non-dual substance, means it's all the same, it's just from different angles. So that verse is often quoted to lay the foundation when we want to speak about the absolute truth. And it establishes that the absolute truth, even though one, has different aspects. And there is an analogy given that, like when you see the sunlight, which we can see very dimmed coming through the window today due to the clouds. But then if the clouds move away, you can see another aspect, you can actually see the sun. However, if you are able to go to the sun itself, you will see a person, the sun God. So these are three different aspects of the same thing. And Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan are the three aspects of the absolute truth. And in this purport, Srila Prabhupada, he speaks about the impersonalists' argument that the Lord has no form. So the impersonalists, they basically say that the absolute truth is some impersonal substance. And often they actually refer to the Brahman, because the Brahman is impersonal. It is just one spiritual light, and it doesn't have any personality. And this is the first aspect for one who is endeavoring to understand the absolute truth. The first thing that is revealed is the Brahman effulgence. But then the impersonalists, they actually get stuck there, meaning because the Brahman in itself is already spiritual, and coming in contact with this substance, it gives one a spiritual experience, and a spiritual experience is always very nice compared to the material experience. They conclude that this is the summum bonum. Srila Prabhupada used this word, the summum bonum means the highest good. That now we are in the Brahman, and now we are free from suffering, and we are situated in eternal reality. So this is the summum bonum. But Srila Prabhupada said, no, the summum bonum is something higher. It's actually the personality of Godhead. I found some verses here which I would like to read, which are quite interesting. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and before I read this verse, it has to be mentioned that the Brahman doesn't have any qualities. It is nirguna or nirvishesh, we can say. It doesn't have any form, doesn't have any taste, and no color. It is just one light. Who has experienced the Brahman? So here in this verse it is said, Tanre nirvishesha kahi chit shakti namani arda swarup namanile purnata hai hani. The translation says, when we speak of the Supreme as impersonal, we deny his spiritual potencies. Logically, if you accept half of the truth, you cannot understand the whole. So meaning, if somebody is saying the absolute truth is Brahman, it is true, but it's only half the truth. Arda, half. It's not the full, it's only half. And half truth is actually not the complete truth, meaning it's not the conclusive understanding. So these impersonalists who realize Brahman, they are actually very exalted personalities. It is not very easy. And usually how they manage to do so is by lifetimes of tapasya, by studying scriptures and by sharpening their intelligence more and more and more, by studying especially the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutra, in which there is nothing else but it tries to explain what is Brahman. But because Brahman is something spiritual and it is actually formless, it is very difficult. But through logic, they manage to work their way up in consciousness to transcend the material modes and come to the Brahman platform. So, naturally, if you achieve something very great, there tends to be some pride connected to it. So, if you want to become a professional football player, and for 20 years, or maybe less, 15 years of your life, you work out, you train, and then finally you get your first contract, and naturally there is a lot of pride behind, because you worked hard. So I did the work, and now I have come here. So in impersonalists there is a similar tendency that they did so much endeavor to come to this platform, and now they are proud of that. But then one problem comes up, that when they study the scriptures, then they read many things which actually give a hint that there could be something higher. Like now we are just reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and we are reading the prayers of Shiva, and Shiva is speaking about the form of the Lord. So Prabhupada, he's a short purport, but he's just poking that point here, that okay, the impersonalists, they say the Brahman is the ultimate, and they worship Shiva often as a very exalted personality, but then here Shiva is speaking about the Lord and his form. So how is it? It's kind of how you say the word? If something is controversial, that I believe in this and I worship that person, but then this person says another thing than what I believe. And so the impersonalists, they have a lot of trouble studying the scriptures. That's their main thing. But then when they study, they come across things which don't make sense in their Siddhanta. And here also we have a... Yeah, that I want to speak about now. Thank you. You took out the drama. Spoiled it. So here in the Chaitanya Charitamrita again, it is said, the absolute truth is described in the Upanishads and Brahma Sutra, but one must understand the verses as they are. That is the supreme glory in understanding. And we know from the pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu meeting Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being so ecstatic in the temple of Jagannath, seeing the form of the Lord, and being a devotee, manifesting ecstatic emotions, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya being a very exalted Vedantist, somebody who studies Vedanta. Seeing this young sannyasi, he got compassionate, and he actually, no, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, in humility, told to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that I'm so young and unexperienced and fallen, but you are so great that please you teach me Vedanta. And so he taught Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Vedanta for 7 days continuously. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was teaching from the Sharirik, I think it's called Sharirika Bhashya, which is the commentary given by Lord Shiva on the Vedanta Sutra. And on the 8th day, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked Lord Chaitanya, I was speaking now for so long and you never said anything, so I don't know if you understand or if you don't understand, so please could you tell me what's going on in your mind? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I was listening very carefully and I understand Vedanta very well. However, the commentaries you're given are quite unclear to me. Actually, instead of explaining the meaning of the verse, they are covering the real meaning. And so that's what the impersonalists have to do. Because many of the verses, they come up, then it doesn't make sense with their Siddhanta, then they just twist it. Srila Prabhupada gives an example in one purport of the Bhagavad Gita, how in the Bhagavad Gita it is, from the first verse they have to start to twist, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre, and then they say, Kurukshetre means the body, and the Pancha Pandava means the 5 senses. So they completely interpret in their own way, and not taking it literally. So that's why Srila Prabhupada gave the Bhagavad Gita as it is, literal meaning. Yes, that's the problem. And I want to just read a few verses to you, which are very powerful. So I just quoted in the beginning this verse, Vadanti tattva vidas, tattvam yachkyanam advayam prameti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. I have, for those of you who have an iPhone or an iPad, I have a new iPad. There is a application. It's called Sri Gaudiya Kantahar. I don't know who made this app, but it's very old. There used to be a book, and I also have the book. I found it in the children room a few years ago, and it is verses from the Gaudiyas in sequence. He compiles them to establish the Siddhanta, and then he will group them. For example, it starts with Guru Tattva, then Bhagavat Tattva, Vaishnav Tattva, Gora Tattva, Nityananda Tattva, Advaita Tattva, Krishna Tattva, Shakti Tattva, Bhagavad Rasa Tattva, Jiva Tattva, Achintya Beda Beda Tattva, Abhideya Tattva, Sadhana Bhakti Tattva, Varna Dharma Tattva, Ashram Dharma Tattva, Shraddha Tattva, Nam Tattva, Prayojan Tattva. Meaning, it takes all the verses to build up the whole Siddhanta in a very nice way. And here in the section, Krishna Tattva, we have these verses. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita again there is a verse, through devotional service devotees can realize or see that personality of Godhead just as the denizens of heaven see the personality of the sun. So here this example of the sun, and that there is actually a sun god behind, and similarly the absolute truth, there is a person behind, and the means to understand that person is bhakti, devotional service. Those on the paths of knowledge and yoga worship only him. Knowledge, the path of knowledge is dealing with the Brahman, and the path of yoga is dealing with the Paramatma aspect. They perceive him as the impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma. Here's another very famous verse from the Brahma Samhita. Yasya prabha prabhavato jagadanda koti koti shashesha vasudhadi vibhuti binnam tat brahmanishkalamanantam ashesha bhutam govindamadi purusham tamahang bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose effulgence is the source of the non-differentiated Brahman, which is mentioned in the Upanishads, and which, being differentiated from the infinity of glories of the mundane universe, appears as the invisible, infinite, and limitless truth. Millions and millions of universes emanate from that Brahman effulgence, which is infinite, causeless, and unlimited. That Brahman effulgence is simply the light emanating from the brilliant form of the Supreme Lord Govinda. Such a clear understanding for the impersonalists and also the devotees what Brahman is. Brahman is just the rays of the body of Krishna. And here is another verse from the Katha Upanishad. I'll just read the translation. In the transcendental abode of the Lord there is no need of sun, moon, or stars for illumination, nor is there any need of electricity, what to speak of lamps. All of them get their power of illumination from the Lord's effulgence alone. In fact, the whole universe exists only because of his existence. We also have this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says that in the spiritual world there is no need of sun and moon light, but there is light due to the effulgence of the Lord. I remember one time a devotee was saying, how is it possible that we hear descriptions of the spiritual world and it says in Goloka Vrindavan the moon comes out and the sun, but then in Bhagavad Gita it is said there is no sun and moon. Explanation? Actually, it's not right, because it is said there is no need of sun and moonlight, but it doesn't say there is no sun and moon. Meaning it's not that the sun and moon are the light givers, but they are still there. That's so this devotee was misunderstanding the point.
Yeah, but in our universe, the sun is a light giver, but this is also Krishna's.
Yeah.
You can actually say.
Yes. Jai Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra Mai ki jai. Shri Gaura ki jai. Yes, so that is the understanding. Brahman is just one aspect of the absolute truth, and it is actually the effulgence from the body of the Lord. That's how Lord Chaitanya tricked the impersonalists when he appeared, because naturally Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was so effulgent, and then you have these impersonalists, Mayavadis, who are just hankering after effulgence, Brahman, so that when they saw him they felt attracted. And so this Bhagavan aspect is the highest, the personal aspect of the Lord. And in the Bhagavad Gita also Krishna says that actually it's fine, you can aspire for the impersonal, you can also aspire for the personal, both is bona fide. But then he says, those who strive for the impersonal, it is a very troublesome thing. It's very difficult because Anandamaya Vyasat, the living entity, is looking for Ananda, and the Brahman actually doesn't have Ananda inside. It's only Sat. It's only eternity. That reminds me, some god brothers of Srila Prabhupada, they were criticizing him that he gave the name Brahmananda to one of his disciples. Brahmananda? So, because they said it's a Mayavadi name. And then Prabhupada was replying, he said, what do they think what Brahman is? Brahman means Krishna. It is, you cannot divide the two, and basically explaining that Brahman is in a way a name of Krishna. So Brahmananda means you get the pleasure from Krishna, not impersonal.
You're sure there is no happiness in
There is no Ananda.
what's the difference between
Happy, sukha, happiness means, I mean the literal meaning of sukha. No, there's sukha and ananda. Gurumaj used to explain the two. Sukha means sukha. Ka means space, and su means good space, means you're in a good space. Or in other words, how you perceive the surrounding is not troublesome, but nice. You see something nice, you feel something nice, you hear something nice. Because the ka, the ether element, is the reservoir of all sense perceptions. So sukha means if the sense perceptions are good. Dukkha means they are not good. It's cold or it's too hot and hot. But ananda is, I mean, you know better what ananda is. Ananda means bliss. And bliss can only be there if there is an exchange of rasa. And the exchange of rasa can only be there if there is a subject and object of love. But in Brahman, everything is impersonal. It cannot happen. There is no exchange of rasa. Please.
What happens to the Satchitananda inherent quality of the jiva when, if this jiva is an impersonalist and goes to Brahman, this jiva always has these three qualities. Actually, Satchitananda, Vigraha, also form. What happens to that?
Yeah, that's, Prabhupada explains, that's why somebody in Brahman has to come down again. If that Ananda would not be there, he could stay eternally there, but he comes down again. Prabhupada said, because he's missing it. That means there is no Ananda in the Brahman. And they cannot go up, usually, because they didn't take the proper way to enter Krishna's home. They have to go again. And yeah, that's, Prabhupada gave this example also of the airplane which goes up and can stay for a while, but if the fuel runs out, it has to come down again. I once heard that, sorry?
I don't know, so give a nice example of what personally just think about this. We have the happiness of sukha in material world that have your opposite dukkha. The happiness in material world, the great example is when you fall in love and you have a relation, sexual relation. This pleasure is the more decent in this world. But the pleasure in the Brahman is like 1,000 billions more elevated. But the pleasure of
Jai. Yeah, it means there is some pleasure, but it is not ananda. Ananda, the literal meaning of ananda means it's connected to rasa, and the rasa is not there in the Brahman. I once heard, I just came to mind, that those jivas who go to Brahman and come down, they come down as gemstones. And gemstones are living beings. No, there is a whole thing in the esoteric world. Oh, you should buy this gemstone, it will be good for you, and all that. So that the gemstones have some effect, and they have some qualities that there is actually a living being inside. And apparently, because the impersonalists who go to the Brahman, they want to become they want to become impersonal, and so then they come down as a gemstone. For many years they can stay as a stone. Yes, so it's troublesome and it's not lasting. Even those who come to the Brahman, they have to come down again. On the other hand, somebody who takes to the path of Bhakti Yoga can realize the personal form of the Lord, which includes all the other aspects, and it is susukam. It is performed happily. And we see that we when we do kirtan, it's sukha. It gives also sukha. It's nice, melodious, and we offer bhoga and take the remnants. We take prasadam. It's also giving us some happiness. So it's susukam. It's actually very blissful, and it is almost too easy that sometimes we forget how easy it would be if we just accept the simple things of bhakti yoga, of doing kirtan, accepting prasadam, associating with the devotees, listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. So we can remind ourselves today that Srila Prabhupada came to give us this very simple path back home, back to Godhead, to realize the personal aspect of the Absolute Truth and experience Ananda forever. Hare Krishna. If you have any comments or...
You mentioned Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, but you told us only half of it. Can you finish this Leela?
The later part of this Leela.
God, this is very nice also. No, he speak, not me.
Let me just put it together. I was quickly reading through, but the beginning part, how Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya meets Lord Chaitanya. Why don't you tell it?
I didn't read it recently. I only know that he asked him, why you are so quiet? You never ask something you do not understand, and then you gave the answer. But after he convinced Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he refuted all his 100 verses or whatever he read, and make clear that he has a wrong understanding of the thing from the Vedanta, and he convinced him that he became after a bhakti.
Yeah, true.
Yes, that's very important.
But I was thinking you want to know the details, how, because it's so beautiful. There is a video on YouTube, Nilachale Mahaprabhu. Nilachale Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu. You know, the Bengalis. Hari, 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 Bol, Hari, Hari, Hari. So there, it is very it's a movie, a dramatic movie, and so what exactly happened apparently is that after this conversation, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was actually he didn't accept that yet, meaning he was humiliated that wow, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling him, I'm explaining and he's not understanding anything. And then when he was in his room, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in the Satpuj form, I think. Right?
Yes.
Satpuj. And this is interesting because in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, what they explained before is that they preached to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is saying, Mahaprabhu is such a young sannyasi, and you know what he's saying? His name is Krishna Chaitanya, means he's a second-class sannyasi. And then Gopinath Acharya was so pained, he said, you don't understand who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then they were arguing, saying, who says the Bhagavan is called Triyugi, comes in 3 yugas, and he's not coming in this, and how can you say he's the Lord? There's no evidence from the scriptures. And then Gopinath Acharya says, no, there is. There is in Bhagavatam and in the Mahabharata evidence. And what was the point I wanted to make? Something connected to what happened after. He saw the Satpuj form, and that's why he was saying apparently there was some understanding that there is a Lord, and I also don't understand exactly, but then later on because he accepts Ramachandra, he accepts Krishna, so then when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared and transformed into that, he immediately accepted. And then he wrote these prayers, I forgot the name, it's 100 or 1000? 100 prayers glorifying him. Yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna. So have a nice day. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
He's in